André y con Bertrand hablando de Solar Impulse. André, Bertrand, how are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
Thanks for being with us. So what's been the experience so far? If you could please just define first, what is Solar Impulse?
Well, Solar Impulse is the first ever airplane of perpetual endurance, flying day and night with no fuel. And the goal is to show that we can achieve incredible goals with clean technologies, without fuel.
Is this something you created by yourselves?
Well, that's an idea that Bertrand had when he flew around the world with a balloon. I don't know if did you fly over Mexico?
Absolutely.
Did you?
I crossed all the country of Mexico with my balloon
You did
on
so?
the way around the world 16 years ago.
Wow.
So when he flew, in fact, they used propane to heat up the balloon quite a lot, 4 tons, and they had only 40 kilograms left after crossing the Atlantic. At the time, we started to think, would it be possible to do this flight around the world without the dependence on fossil energy, using only renewables?
Yeah.
This was 1999.
1999, yes. And then I presented this project to the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, who initiated a feasibility study. And they had the excellent idea to ask André to be the leader of that feasibility study. That's how we met. And we said, let's continue together. We are very different. André is an entrepreneur, an engineer, jet fighter pilot. I'm an explorer, a psychiatrist, a balloon pilot. So together, we cover a huge scope because we're so different.
So what's been the experience so far? I mean, you've been flying like for one year or so?
So we have been working 12 years to build 2 airplanes. With the first airplane, we could demonstrate we can fly day and night with the solar energy only. So getting energy from the sun during the day, storing enough, and using so little that we can fly through the entire night with this energy, with the possibility to continue.
What's the autonomy? How long? How many hours?
The autonomy is now almost perpetual. It can
Because
fly.
of the sunlight.
We demonstrated by flying 5 days over the Pacific Oceans from Japan to Hawaii last July. So the first time ever that a solar airplane could fly over the ocean for such a long time. And the longest flight of any type of airplane with only one pilot on board ever done. The previous record was 3 days, now we have 5, and this with solar energy only. And theoretically, in fact, the airplane could fly 1 week, 1 month. In fact, the limiting factors start to be us, start to be the pilots.
Were you scared?
Well, you know, I'm much more scared to live in a world that burns 1 million tons of oil every hour. 1 million tons of oil every hour.
Yeah.
Not counting coal and gas. This makes me really afraid, much more than flying in a solar-powered airplane. Solar-powered airplane is something healthy to do.
But I guess there are some risks associated with this initiative, aren't they?
But there is always risk, but you try to mitigate them. So you train, in fact. What you do, and what we did is to train for the worst. And train for the worst is to use the parachute, is to jump out over the ocean, get into the water, maybe use the life raft that we have somewhere in our back,
And
the weights that
prepare
ship
for the sharks.
nicely comes back. It comes around to pick us up. So by preparing, in fact, the worst, you get the anxiety of an accident, of a problem, away, and you can focus on the work to be on the work to be done. It frees your mind, in fact.
How do you envision this technology in the future? This has been just a project for you both, and many other companies that are supporting you. But what about in 5 years? Will we see commercial airplanes in the future with this technology?
I would be crazy to say yes and stupid to say no. Because today we don't have the technology to transport 200 passengers in a solar impulse airplane. But the Wright brothers, they also did not have the technology to transport passengers. Charles Lindbergh crossed the Atlantic alone, and nobody thought that it could be possible to have 200 people in the same airplane.
Right.
So you see, you need first pioneers like us. Demonstrate what is feasible, push the limits, bring the clean technologies to their ultimate application. And then you will have industry who will carry on, who will develop, who will optimize, and put maybe some applications in airplanes. But before it goes in airplanes, it should go on the ground for electrical mobility, for insulation of houses,
That
for
was-
smart grid.
That's actually what
And
I
this
was going
is-
to ask, because I
Exactly.
think it has applications in so many different industries, isn't it?
Absolutely. And 3% of energy and CO2 emissions are made by airplanes. 97 are on the ground. So let's use all these technologies, all this excitement that we create around the clean tech revolution. Let's use it to do something good on the ground. This is where jobs are going to be created, where money and profit is going to be generated, and at the same time it fights against climate change.
If you can select one single moment of the past a year and a half that was yes, very clear in your history, I mean, as entrepreneurs, as adventurers, what's that moment? What's the key point of this?
I think there are different ones. If you think about the flight itself, you have to realize that when you go into such an airplane, you go into the unknown. So you have a lot of surprises. You have a lot of happenings. And that's what we had, I mean, during these flights there. But I think one of the key moments was COP21, when we could present this airplane, also present this solution, present this vision.
Why was that so important, so relevant?
From the beginning, my dream was to be able to have a tool that could convince and motivate people for clean technology. And when André was flying across the Pacific, 5 days and 5 nights with no fuel, it was the proof that it was possible. And when I could talk at the United Nations in Paris for COP21 and show these solutions and tell to the heads of states and the ministers who were there, you need that same pioneering spirit.
Right.
The technologies exist. They are profitable today. The solutions are here. Use them. Replace the old polluting devices by new modern clean technologies that are much more efficient.
Are you satisfied?
At that moment I thought Solar Impulse is a voice that is heard.
Are you satisfied with the level of support that you are getting from corporations and from countries?
You know, it's interesting to see when we started the project, we presented this idea to the aviation world, and the aviation world said it's impossible. So we had to find other solution. And we had to find the technologies which made it possible, which we got, in fact, from companies from different sectors, which are completely unrelated. The chemical world, the power production, the electronic industry, but companies who had technologies, but the spirit also, the level of innovation to make it possible to build an airplane of the size of a 747 with the weight not exceeding the weight of a car. And these companies are the ones who are interested to produce also the application to build better homes, better cars in terms of energy efficiency. And so there's a win-win collaboration here.
And the support is growing? Many more companies want to join your project?
More companies are coming, more governments are listening, and more followers are joining. And it also shows that what is important for the people in this world, if we want to have a better quality of life, is to move out of our habits, out of our comfort zone, out of our paradigms and dogmas. And this is the only way leading to innovation. If we continue to do the same as usual, we will never have better quality of life. So today the power of dream, the power of hope is absolutely crucial if we want to motivate people to move into the future. And this is also a big part of it. Telling people you can do better, you can do more, but change altitude, drop your certitude, and take new directions.
What's the role of emerging countries like Mexico, for example, Latin American countries? What do you think is their role in supporting these type of initiatives?
Our goal is not to be supported by emerging countries. Our goal is to support emerging countries. Because when we fight climate change, there is a big mistake. It's when people believe that the emerging countries have to reduce their growth, reduce their development in order to protect the environment. It's wrong. Emerging markets, developing countries today, can go directly to clean technologies. They can avoid the mistakes that the rich countries have done. And if we want to stimulate growth and job creation in the emerging markets, let's go now directly to the energy efficient technologies, to the modern technologies. There's so much to be implemented, and that's really the way to go.
You know, it's an advantage because what you see in old countries, for example, like Europe, that they are using these old technologies. It's a big barrier to introduce something new.
Right.
And when you have an emerging market which has the choice between all the new technologies, they can jump into this future immediately.
Passing by the other one.
It's an opportunity.
Right. Do you consider yourselves like heroes?
Hero is not important, or let's say hero is the consequence if we succeed. We consider ourselves as pioneers, or innovators, or explorers, because we go into the unknown. We accept to make that jump, losing our comfort zone, losing our certitudes, and go into a project that a lot of people consider to be impossible. And when we succeed, then it's such a huge satisfaction because it gives hope into the human potential and resources. It shows an example. And we had role models when we were children about astronauts, about aviators. If we can inspire the young generation to also go into the unknown, to also go and deal with question marks, with doubts, with uncertainties, in order to create something better, something new, then I think Solar Impulse will have been really useful.
When is the next flight?
Next flight is scheduled from April 20th, when the window of energy is opening. You know, the days a bit longer, the nights a bit shorter. From Hawaii, we continue going to the west coast of America, maybe in Mexico, although in fact the winds I think will push us more towards the north, but it's not totally impossible. Across the United States, and then the Atlantic going back to Abu Dhabi, hopefully around July.
Do you need to go through many bureaucratic requirements to, go to a specific country? Is that?
It's quite complicated, yes, because it's an experimental airplane. So it's an airplane which has a different certification. So you need authorization. Everything we do is a little bit special, but the countries that we have been flying to have been so great. I tell you, from Abu Dhabi towards now Hawaii. In India, in China, in Myanmar, in Japan. So the level of support has been fabulous. So it's difficult, but we get a lot of support.
How many more flights from this one that you are describing? Many more during the following months, or what's the long-term achievement you want to reach?
There will be several very long flights to the West Coast, across the Atlantic, across Europe, back to Abu Dhabi, and some shorter flights across America. Altogether, we should have about 7 or 8 flights, and we look really forward because, you know, when you get into that plane, you are cleared by the air traffic control for departure. You put full throttle, you hear no noise, and you take off, and you know you make no pollution.
Right.
It's fascinating. And you know that millions of people are following us on our website, solarimpulse.com, because they support our message.
Yeah.
They support this idea of clean technologies and better quality of life. So we're never alone in the cockpit because so many people follow us.
And when you take off, you can theoretically fly forever. There's no limits.
Right.
So the relationship with time is different.
And finally, what do you want to take away from this World Economic Forum's annual meeting? Why are you here in Davos?
The world is gathering here. So of course, it's a fantastic place to meet people, to learn from others, what they do, what new technologies they have invented, how they implement it in their business. And for us, it's a fantastic way to demonstrate what can be achieved with this new clean technology and renewable energy. So we are advocating for innovation, for progress, and meeting a lot of people who are ready to listen and ready to tell us also. So it's the place to be. And I've been about 7 times now in the World Economic Forum in Davos. I learned a lot. I think it's a place where things are decided and where you can induce change.
Right.
It's not only in the protection of the environment and the NGOs that things happen. Everybody is convinced already. You have to go and speak the language of economy, the language of industry, the language of politics, and that's how things can change.
And it's a great place to think about the future. We want to complete now the flight around the world, but we are already thinking about what can we do with all the technologies that we have, the experience we develop. And one domain that we could and we will tackle is to build an unmanned version of this airplane. So solar airplane which could fly 6 months, 1 year, non-stop, at a certain position, replacing potentially what satellites are doing, but in a much easier way, in a much more sustainable way. So there's a great future in these directions, and these are here. There's a space here, in fact, to discuss, to understand, to grab, in fact, where all this is going, and to see in which direction to make this development.
Any final word for the Mexican audience that you want to say?
Mexico can be a leading country in Latin America. And what the world needs are political leaders with visions who implement their vision. So it's really up to Mexico to decide if they want to do it, and they can take the lead in Latin America into the implementation of these renewable energies and clean technology. And it would be fantastic to see it happening.
Yeah. Anything else?
And Mexico has a great geographical position in relation to the sun. So sun is a great resource, but let's not forget that if we use sun as a source of energy, it's also important to think about how to use the energy we have in a very efficient way. Combining energy efficiency and renewable energy is exactly what we do with this airplane, is exactly what could be done in Mexico.
Well, it's great talking to you, and you two pioneers. It's just an amazing work that you've been doing, and thank you for speaking to us. Thank you so much.
With pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great pleasure.
Thanks.